How long are the waiting periods for pardons, record suspensions, and file destructions in Canada? That's what I'm going to cover in this video. I'm Dan Joffe, lawyer at NextLaw, Canada's only law firm dedicated to pardons and U.S. waivers. Our law firm will get your pardon application done right for a reasonable cost. Book a free consultation using the link in the description. Let's get started. Before you can get your pardon, record suspension, or file destruction in Canada, you need to wait. And those wait times are different depending on what you were charged with and how your charges were resolved. I'm going to cover wait times for convictions and non-convictions, including conditional discharges, absolute discharges, stay charges, peace bonds, and charges that were withdrawn, dismissed, and acquitted. And I will also cover criminal charges for which you cannot get a pardon or record suspension. Okay, let's start with wait times for convictions. Now, what is a conviction? It is when you've gone to court, you were found guilty, and you were convicted. Now, your wait times depend on a few factors. First factor is how the Crown proceeded with your charge. If they proceeded it as a summary offense or they proceeded it as an indictable offense, and when your first offense was, if it was before or after March 12th, 2012. So if you had a summary conviction and your first offense was before March 12th, 2012, your wait time would be 3 years. If your first offense was before March 12th, 2012, and the Crown proceeded as a summary offense, your wait time is 5 years. For indictable offenses, if the first offense was before March 12th, 2012, the wait time is 5 years. If it was after March 12th, 2012, the wait time is 10 years. Now, this leads to the question of when does this waiting period start to count? And it starts after your sentence is complete, and that includes any jail time, probation, and fines. And in all other cases, it would be the wait time would start at your court date. Now, that doesn't mean that every crime can be pardoned. In fact, there are a few crimes that you cannot get a pardon or record suspension for. Sexual convictions where a minor was involved, or secondly, where you had 4 or more indictable offenses, each with 2 years or more jail time. Now let's discuss non-convictions. Non-convictions is when you had an interaction with the police, it led to charges, but there was no conviction. But this is a problem because you're in a police database, and that non-conviction, your interaction with the police, would be disclosed in a background check. So you'd want to fix that and erase that from any criminal database. First is something called a conditional discharge. That's when you went to court, you were found guilty, but you were not convicted. And in these cases, the punishments usually are probation, community service, or fines. And in these cases, you need to wait 3 years before you can clear your record. For absolute discharges, that means you went to court, you were found guilty but not convicted, but there was no punishment. In these cases, absolute discharges, you need to wait 1 year before you can clear your name. Another non-conviction is something called stayed charges. That's when your case is over, but the Crown, if they get new evidence, they may reopen your case within 1 year. And in these cases where you have stayed charges, you need to wait a year before you can clear your name. And then there's something called peace bonds. Now, in most cases, peace bonds are where the charges originally laid are withdrawn and you're told to keep the peace and to keep good behavior and basically stay away from the person that was involved in the original charge. And in those cases, in most peace bonds, it's about a year that you need to wait before you can clear your name. Finally, there are cases where charges that are withdrawn, that is when the case did not go to trial. That's when a Crown lawyer asks the court to withdraw the charge. Another non-conviction is when your charges were dismissed, and that's basically when there probably wasn't enough evidence to proceed, so your charge was dismissed, or you can have a charge acquitted. That's actually when you went to court and you were found not guilty. In all cases where your charges were withdrawn or dismissed or acquitted, you need to wait about 5 months before you can clear your name. And finally, what's very important is in this waiting period, in terms of to be eligible to get a pardon or record suspension or file destruction, you need to be a law-abiding citizen, which means, quite simply, you need to stay out of trouble. Finally, the most important factor in getting your pardon is to get your application right. Mistakes will cost you time and, in some cases, rejection. We are Canada's only law firm dedicated to pardons and U.S. waivers. Let's get your application done right for a reasonable cost. Click on the link below to schedule a free, no obligation call.